Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I came to this place and I wrote an entire speech, but listening to everybody debate this, listening to some of the questions that have been asked from some of our Liberal members, I really feel that it's really important that we have the conversation and just not look at some of the talking points or anything of that sort. And so, like everything I do, I come here as who I am, and that's a mom of 5. And so, you know, I'll talk about the way I parent, and there's a member over there who I wish I knew exactly his riding, but we do ride the bus together, so I know every time I have a question about cannabis, I just go to the former chief of police and I ask him everything I need to know. So I do thank him for always having those respectful conversations with me so that I can ask every question I ever have needed to ask. So I would like to put that on the record. You know, we talk about it and what we have to look at for our kids. You know, whether we're calling it weed or doobies or blunts or all of those other words that we've heard of briefers, I think what we really have to do is look at how we're approaching this. And it does really concern me because I myself believe that the legislation, is it right or wrong to do this legislation, is not the choice I have here, but what are the parts in this legislation that I cannot agree with? So I'll be honest, and I'm going to put all my cards on the table because I think that's what Canadians are expecting from us. I believe in decriminalizing the cannabis. I believe that's something that we should look at. And I think it's become, because I have those sit-down family discussions with my kids, with my nieces and nephews, with my parents, because I think the biggest thing we need to recognize, it is out there, and what can we do that's better to serve? Now, I'm not going to say that decriminalizing is the way I'm going to say that it makes it right, because I don't believe it's the right thing, especially when it comes to our youth. And so I want to go back to this legislation and talk about parts of the legislation that really do need to be tweaked, because I think what we're doing is we are harming children if we think this legislation is right. And so when I looked at this legislation, there were 2 parts that I looked at. One, it has to do with the age of ability to purchase. And as I've indicated, with 5 children, my youngest is 14, my oldest is 23 years old this year. My 23-year-old, my 21-year-old, my 20-year-old, and my 19-year-old are all eligible to now be able to purchase, or as of July 1st, 2018, will be eligible to purchase marijuana. Now, I'm not going to ask it or tell any about my children's stories, but I can tell you that I have firsthand seen what happens after marijuana use. Whether you're going to see grades drop by 30% or attendance go from perfect to nothing, these things are challenges that parents are having to deal with each and every day. So those are the things that I want to make sure that this government is listening to when we talk about it. We have talked about what happens to children who have smoked marijuana, and some of the things that the Canadian Medical Association have come out and talked about with the formation of the brain. I'm really concerned, and as the member from Kamloops Thompson had mentioned, you know, their brains aren't developed, and the age is 25 years old is what they're saying is fair. But we had a task force coming out saying 21, and then we had legislation coming out at 18. And I'm going to put it on the record because I believe the only reason that it's at 18 is because that is when you can vote. And I think this is a vote-seeking motion, and I really am angry about that. You may not, and I'm saying this because I have the right to say this as a parent of 5. Yeah. I am very concerned that you're not taking into consideration, or that the government's not taking into consideration what is going to happen to our children. And I ask any parent to sit down with their kids and start talking, because that's not what we're doing here. I decided to take this conversation to my family. So I sat down on Easter, you know, when we're all supposed to be celebrating Jesus and all that stuff. We talked about marijuana because I needed to hear from the people that knew best. It was my nephews and my nieces and my sister who was a high school teacher, my sister who is a principal in elementary school, my brother-in-laws who do careers, my other sister-in-law who has worked so hard when it comes to understanding, and she actually goes out and counsels families. And so I really had to bring this down to what it really meant. And the moment I said that my son, Christian, who is 14 years of age, would be able to possess marijuana with no charges, that is when the conversation took a totally different turn. Because we all want to protect Christian because he's 14 years of age. But we have to understand that this legislation is not really doing that. We have to understand that we have children who are going to be in grade 9 that are going to be in high school with people that are going to be 18 years of age, able to buy this, and then the next thing you know, here you go. Here, have a good weekend. Do we not think that this is going to happen? And that's what really frustrates me, because let's get it. Sit down and talk to your 14-year-old children and start saying to yourselves, Do I want my child to be able to have marijuana on their possession without being charged? Do I want them to know this is right or wrong? I am also very, very concerned with the fact that we're looking at the medicinal use of marijuana as well when it comes to when people use it. And I am a huge supporter of medicinal marijuana. And that's because I have seen people, and I've lived with somebody who has been on OxyContin, and I can tell you it has negative effects. So for years, I've advocated on medicinal marijuana. I am very scared that because we legalize marijuana for all Canadians, because let's be honest, once you open it up and say you can get it at 18, you know our 12-year-olds are going to get it for sure as well. Absolutely. Are we going to stop funding the important research that needs to be done so that the people who are using medicinal marijuana are getting the proper strains that they need? And I'm very concerned that we're not going to do that, that we've said we've legalized it, we're going to use the science for all of this other kind of stuff, but are we going to make sure that people who need it the most, who have been using medicinal marijuana for the last number of years, are going to get the proper care that they need? And so I really want to ask this government if they're going to continue to invest in the research for medicinal marijuana. I was very happy yesterday. I was here and listening to the debate, and yesterday and the day before on Bill C-46, which really truly does intertwine with this bill. And you know, I heard actually one of the members from the other side comment about the zero tolerance, and so I'm going to mix in with this part as well. We have to understand that if a person is using marijuana for the first time, that the reaction that they have is going to be extremely different from the person who is a daily smoker for the past 20 years. Yet we're saying this is how we're going to take it, and this is you know, as long as you have so much on you or grams, we're going to take you in and process it and check the THC levels. Let's be honest here. If a person has had marijuana for the first time and gets behind that wheel, it is a hazard. It is unsafe. They're going to kill themselves or they're going to kill another person, and I think that we have to be sure that we're putting the safety and security of Canadians first. I don't believe that this legislation on Bill C-46 goes far enough, but I'm happy that we're going to go back to it. I'm going to go back to my family, and we're going to talk a little bit more about kids. We have heard time and time again, whether it's from the Canadian Psychiatric Association, whether it's from the Canadian Pediatrics Association, whether it's from the Canadian Medical Association, whether it's from counselors who have dealt with cannabis for a number of years, we know that we're opening up a Pandora's box. And I am very, very concerned with this because I do not think that we actually have all of the tools that we need in place. I was really happy to see Budget 2017 come out with $5 million for education, but we're going to educate them. And as many of the colleagues have said, we're educating them, and the horse is already out of the barn. We're putting the cart behind the horse. This is very, very simple. People are going to be educated about cannabis after they've started smoking it. Let's be honest here. Should we not get it started by where we have the education for our teachers, for our parents, for our children, to make sure that they know what they're getting into? It's a safety warning, but we're going to put the safety warnings after they've inhaled. It was really interesting listening to some of the members also talk about tobacco, and I've heard about tobacco and how we've stopped doing things. My former boss is part of the Tobacco Transition Fund, and my community, the 5 communities in southwestern Ontario, were huge in the tobacco industry. We know that there were some really good campaigns that were out there. Yes, of course, we did see a number of adolescents continue to smoke, but people who are older were beginning to quit, and those were some things that we saw as well. We know that campaigns work, so I'm asking this government, why are you putting a campaign about combustible cannabis out after the fact? So I really don't understand that. If we're trying to teach people the problems with marijuana, why would we not be teaching them right from the start? We know that combustible things in our lungs is bad for us, just like tobacco. So when are we going to do the education? So I am so fearful that this government is so pressing on this, wanting to get through by July 1st of 2018, that they're going to forget about Christian. They're going to forget about Garrett, Hannah, Marissa, and Dakota, my 5 children. And they're going to forget about everybody else's children because they're more concerned about getting this legislation through because they want an actual promise that they've kept on the 2015 election. I know that there are some very, very, very good MPs over there, and I know that he's known that I'm pointing at him. And I hope, and I plead with him as a former police officer, to know that me, as a parent, needs to make sure that this government is going to protect us. This is going to be something that goes through regardless of whether we like it or not. There is a majority government. So I beg this government to know my children are relying on you. The safety of our communities are relying on you. Do it right. Don't do it fast. Thank you very much.
Bravo.